Hello everyone, and welcome to another video from IELTS Step by Step. Some of you may be wondering where I have been for the last few months, and well, the answer is that I've been working on a huge course, the IELTS Step by Step Mastering All Skills course, which is finally ready. I'm not going to talk too much about that now. I'll let you get on with what you wanted to do with this video and the reason for clicking on this. So I'll talk about it later on in this video. So in this video, what we're going to be talking about is how the people who create the questions in the reading and the listening exams of the IELTS, how they actually work. So these people are called exam setters, and their job is simply to find appropriate texts for the reading and the listening exams and adapt them for the IELTS exam. For the listening exam, they usually come up with their own texts, but for the reading, usually those texts are taken from newspapers or magazines such as New Scientists or The Economist or something like that. And they're adapted, perhaps made a bit shorter, or technical words are removed, or they're given explanations in brackets, for example. And then once they've got a text, the next step is to create the questions that are suitable for an IELTS exam. Now, I've done literally hundreds of IELTS exams myself, and I've done them blind. Blind means I've never seen them before I do the exam under exam conditions. So for example, a reading exam is 1 hour and I do the reading exam in 1 hour. And I think that's one of the reasons why my courses are so popular, because people can see that I also make mistakes and that I also get caught out by these exam setters. But that's how we learn, right? So the mistakes that I make, you've learned from. The mistakes you make, we all learn from. Anyway, I've done hundreds of IELTS exams, and I've got to know how the exam setters think. They certainly seem to have specific formulas to come up with IELTS style questions, and I talk about those formulas throughout the IELTS step-by-step Mastering All Skills course, not only in the reading and the listening sections, but also in the writing and the speaking exams too. And one thing in particular that is very interesting is how the exam setter decides where in the text would be a good place to put a question. This can actually be quite a difficult decision for them when they are working. You know, where to put a question, because he or she, of course, they know how to make a true, false, not given question, or a multiple choice question, or a gap fill question, but they might find it difficult to decide where to put it in the text. And I think I've stumbled across a formula that the exam setters use for that too, finding a place to put a question. And to make their lives easier, they, let's say, use this formula to suggest there could be a question here, or there could be a question here, or there could be a question here. And so wouldn't it be great if you, as a candidate, could also know which areas of a text the examiners typically make questions from? So half your job is done if you can see straight away where the questions where the answers to a whole bunch of questions will typically be hiding. So you might have 5 questions about a certain text that is requiring a gap fill, so you have to fill in words or fill in a word, and usually using this technique you can pretty much be sure that there's going to be a question for one, an answer for one of them hiding here, hiding here, hiding here, hiding here, and it's just a matter of finding those areas of the text. Okay, so the video that I'm going to show you now is related to something that I call Honey LEXIS, and I'll explain why I call it Honey LEXIS in the video itself. And this video is taken from the IELTS Step-by-Step Mastering All Skills course. So this is one of, I think, almost 50 learner training videos on top of all the other videos in the course. So it's a very extensive course. It's about 70 hours long, or videos at least, and then there's lots of other exercises that are even longer than that. So it's a very extensive course. But before we talk about the course itself, let's go and have a look at the video, and you can see how you can apply this formula, that I think the same formula that examiners use, exam setters use, and then you can make your life a lot easier in especially the reading exam, and to a certain extent the listening exam as well. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, welcome to this video which deals with something called Honey LEXIS. I came up with this term myself, so I'm going to explain it. Those of you who have already done the IELTS listening, step-by-step listening course, will have already heard about Honey LEXIS, but it's worth watching this video as well because it gives examples of Honey LEXIS in reading, not just in the listening exam. So I'll recap this for you, and for those of you who don't know what Honey LEXIS is, this is a chance for you to try and understand it before we move on to the examples. Okay, so let's start off with the word LEXIS. Over here we've got the word table, which you can see is a single piece of vocabulary. It's just a single noun, whereas a wooden table is a type of collocation. Wooden and table, these two words sometimes come together. And then to sit around a table is a common phrase that people might use. And then the idiom, for example, lay your cards on the table, be explicit about what your position is. All of these are examples of LEXIS, not just the single word table, but the collocations and the set phrases and the idioms. These are all types of LEXIS. So let's find out what Honey LEXIS is. Now, I came up with this term myself as a teacher, trying to explain how examiners who set the IELTS exam, might find places in the text where they could create questions. And having done so many IELTS exams over the years, I've sort of developed a sense for where a question might be hiding, or where an answer might be hiding, based really on this idea of Honey LEXIS. And so the B in this picture represents the exam setter, the person who's creating the exam, and then this LEXIS is a sort of honey that attracts them to this part of the text where they would find it easier or more efficient at least to create a question from. So let's have a look at what I mean. So all of these questions, number 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, would have to have been created from the text on the right. And so what I'll be showing you is how quite often the Honey LEXIS is very close to where the answer might be hiding, simply because I've been looking at it from the perspective of the exam setter, trying to understand what their difficulties were about coming up with the questions in the first place. What sort of questions could they generate that weren't too easy but also weren't too difficult? So let's have a look at this first. Now, what you'll notice, I've already underlined some words. They're in blue. Now, these ones you'll notice are all numbers, such as 1857, capital letters like Perkin, and place names, like or at least nationalities like Scottish or French. And this is the first type of these are the first this is not technically Honey LEXIS in the way that I think about it, but it's often where an answer will sit. A lot of the questions relate to who did something, or where something happened, or at what date something happened. So that is why I've underlined these words for you, and I strongly recommend that this is something that you do. And I've already done a video on this, about where you should be underlining in the questions as well as in the text itself. And this is one of the main things, is underlining capitalized words, underlining numbers, and underlining anything that's in italics, as well as in brackets. So over here you'll see that's referring to what the word fast means, and it's here is an example. IE means for example, or sorry, doesn't mean for example. EG means for example. IE means in other words. So this is worth, obviously for the text, it's worth putting in 3 more words for just a single word. So that designates that this is an important word, and it may well come up as an answer. Anyway, those are the words that you would underline straight away. Capitalized words, numbers, and words that are in italics, and words that are they've got brackets for them. Now, what we're going to be looking at is the honey LEXIS words. Now, what these tend to be are words that introduce examples. So words with the words like such and as, such natural sources as. Here we've got such as, and over here we've got the word for instance. Other words would be for example. Okay, so look out for those because they often point to where an answer might be. Okay, the next one, it emphasizes. You'll see a lot of blue ones here. This structure, so something that, or such something that, the word indeed. This is called inversion, or sorry, clefting actually. This is called clefting, and it means, it says it was against this backdrop that Perkins' discovery was made. I could say this sentence like this: Perkins' discovery was made against this backdrop. That would be grammatically correct as well. But starting it with a dummy it is a word that doesn't actually have any reference. It just has to be there as a grammatical structure in English. So there are lots of examples of dummy its, like when we talk about the weather. It is raining. It doesn't refer to anything. It just has to be there because English needs, every time needs, a subject in its sentence, not like for example, Spanish. Okay, so when we use this structure, it was against this backdrop that, so it's it plus the verb be plus that is an example of emphasis in grammar rather than using words like indeed. Okay, we've got another one that's emphasizing using the most, and then down here particularly, which is another word for very. Okay, and now it explains cause and result. Words like therefore, because, thus, so. Here is an example using grammar. It starts, the verb begins with an ing. Sorry, the sentence begins with a verb and an ing, and then there's a comma. Utilizing the cheap and plentiful coal tar that was an almost unlimited byproduct of London's gas street lighting, comma, the dye works began producing. So I could write, because they used because they utilized the unlimited supply, they could begin producing. So it's another way to say because. So we need to look out for those ing and comma over here, and then thus, or another word for therefore. Okay. The other thing it has is words like important, problem, solution. Here you see it in purple. So this is another example actually of clefting. It is important to note that. There's that, there's the is, there's the be, plus on top of that it's got the word important. So this could well be an answer somewhere hiding here. And crucial is another word for very important. Okay. It adds contrast as well. There's only one example in this whole text here, and it's although, but there's lots of examples of contrast, words like however, on the other hand, nevertheless, and we're going to see those words in the next section. It also gives opinions, especially at the beginning of a sentence, starting with a capital letter and then a comma. So interestingly, comma, somebody did this or somebody did that. Surprisingly, comma, there should be a comma here. And there's no examples of these opinion words in this text, but look out for them because that's another example of of honey LEXIS. And occasionally you'll find that it uses rhetorical questions such as, and why would that be, comma, question mark, well, comma, and then it gives the answer, and often the answer itself is, often the question itself, did I say question? Did I say answer? Yes. Let me start again. Often the sentence that comes after the rhetorical question is the answer to one of these questions. Okay, sorry to interrupt you right in the middle of this very interesting video about something called honey LEXIS, but I just quickly want to talk to you about the IELTS step-by-step mastering all skills course, which is where this video comes from. And as I said, this video is one of about 50 tips and tricks and techniques and training videos that form part of the Mastering All Skills course. So let me quickly just show you what you will be getting if you signed up to this course. So over here on the right hand side, you'll see there are 15 sections, and each section has 4 skills in it. So it starts off with the reading, goes on to the listening, then some speaking, and then some writing down at the bottom here. And you can see just how extensive each unit, each section is. And these are where my world famous videos reside. So here, for example, this one that we've got up here is the feedback video. So what you would be doing, for example, is doing the academic test or the general training test, if you want, over here, of the reading. And then this is where my videos of the feedback step-by-step videos have become extremely popular, not just on YouTube but also on Udemy and Facebook. And so these feedback videos here are quite extensive. So this one here is 23 minutes, and it gives a lot of detail about why the reasons are or what they are. Why the answers are what they are and the reasons for them. Okay. And it's very important that I do these videos, these feedback videos, because like I said, I am also flying blind. I'm also doing these videos blind so that the mistakes that I make can be learned from by others as well. Okay, and of course there's other things as well, speaking tests with different people, students from all over the world, so people who speak a language that is related to, for example, Rajesh, who's from Nepal. Any other languages from northern India, Nepal, would benefit from especially listening to Rajesh, but there's students from Brazil, students from Russia, students from Sri Lanka, and you will have a chance to listen to all of these people and learn from them, the mistakes that they've made. And what part of this course is also some experience or some practice, at least, with learning some vocabulary. Now, having said that, this is a smaller part of what you can get if you sign up for the Mastering Vocabulary and Grammar course. So this is all the skills: reading, writing, listening, speaking. And a separate course that I strongly recommend that you sign up to is the Mastering Vocabulary and Grammar course. That is an extremely popular course, and you can see this course here. 4.9, it's actually 4.96 at the moment, so very, very highly rated course, extremely extensive. You can learn all the most important vocabulary and grammar that is suitable for the IELTS exam. And so I've had some very positive feedback about this course. So both of these courses are going to be available at an 80% discount, both of them, but only for the next 10 days. So I strongly recommend that you take advantage of the link that is now below in the video, where you can get 80% off the Mastering All Skills 7+ course, as well as the Mastering Vocabulary and Grammar course. With those together, you will become invincible in the IELTS exam, both academic and the general training. So thank you very much for listening to this short little section about these two courses, and I'll let you carry on with the rest of the video about Honey LEXIS. Okay, so let's see how close these questions are to some of the Honey LEXIS that's sitting here. So look at number 8. So I've underlined these important words. So before his discovery, what group in society was the color purple associated? And the answer for that one is the rich. So look, it's right next to the Honey LEXIS here. So costly in society that at the time only the rich could afford it. So although it's not next door, it's certainly within the same sentence. Okay. And now remember these type of questions where they've given you, where you're putting down two words. These are always in order. So I now know that number 8 is done. So I no longer need to look anywhere above the word rich. So anywhere along here and up is not necessary to look at. Okay. So what potential did Perkin immediately understand that his new die had? So something about potential, and look over there. We've got near to the word Perkin. As you can see, he comes quite often, Perkin, but there is literally the next word is a Honey LEXIS, example of some Honey LEXIS. So he understood that it could be used to color fabric. Okay. And there the word color and fabric would be the answer for number 9. What was the name finally used to refer to the color he invented? And so the important words here are names that are finally used. And we can see there that this is hidden in the other underlined text. So there's no Honey LEXIS here so much, but look, there is a bracketed explanation for the word mauve. And so there is a good example of where, although this is not Honey LEXIS, it's got it's very close to sort of important words that you would underline in the exam. Okay, so the answer there, mauve. Number 11, what was the name of the person Perkin consulted before setting up his own die work? So now we're looking for the name, and you'll see that straight away the word name would give, we would have to look for the name of somebody. So it's probably, yes, Mr. Pullard, Robert Pullard. Again, because we've underlined capitalized words, we are able to find the answer quite quickly. Number 12, in what country did Perkin's newly invented color first become fashionable? And that country, I can see straight away that only France is really mentioned here. And so if we, first become fashionable, and I don't know where that happened. Yeah, they're 12 over there. So Empress Eugenie of France, she decided that the new color flattered her. Okay, so again, there's not necessarily any Honey LEXIS around here, but a capitalized word is the answer itself. And number 13, according to the passage, which disease is now being targeted by researchers using synthetic dyes? Okay, now let's have a look. So which disease is targeted, and probably synthetic dyes I would underline. And down here we found the word malaria. We didn't underline it, but it's close to this Honey LEXIS here. Plays a crucial role, particularly in pleasing Perkin, using a vaccine against malaria. Okay, so for instance. So you will notice, of course, that there's a lot of spaces where the examiners could have asked a lot more questions. Around here, that's a perfect place, because often questions are created around contrasting Honey LEXIS, as well as over here. But they chose not to. It does not necessarily mean that you couldn't have created questions from here. But it's still useful to be aware of honey LEXIS, and also be very important, be aware of how underlining capitalized words and names and numbers can help you to identify very quickly where an answer might be hiding. You'll notice that every single time an answer is here, it's quite close to one of these things that you've either underlined or highlighted. Okay, let's do some practice now. Let's do some examples first and then practice. So here are a few more examples of honey LEXIS. So emphasis, as I said, particularly is another word for very. Here it is, very, really, extremely, actually. And here's examples of clefting, or these two at least. So what many people don't realize is it's an example of clefting, and here's the clefting with it. It is this issue, that. And then you'll find that do is usually found in negative or questions, but in this case it's being used as an emphasis. Scientists do know, however, that. Okay, and that's an example of emphasis using grammar. Okay, honey LEXIS, that's related to the word important, solution, problem. You'll see all of this here. So important to consider, find a solution, deal with a problem, all of this, and make use of Macmillan Dictionary's lexical sets. You'll see a video on that, where we look at different ways of saying problem, for example. And Macmillan Dictionary's got a great thesaurus that shows lexical sets. So type in, for example, problem into Macmillan Dictionary and click on the word thesaurus or thesaurus, and you'll see words like bottleneck, setback, etc. Okay, adds contrast, I spoke about this. However, on the other hand, in contrast, I've put the word but here because it's so common. It's not necessarily always a example of honey LEXIS, but it depends on how it's used. And the same thing over here with the word so. It's also in a star. It's not something that I would always expect to be an example of honey LEXIS. It depends on how it's used. But the other ones, however, are much stronger when you talk about cause and result, because of this can affect. All of these are good examples of honey LEXIS. Then introduces examples. We've seen at least a few of those, such as, for instance, to illustrate, namely. Sometimes this is a more informal way to say such as. A more informal way to say for instance or for example. And then giving opinions, interestingly, unfortunately, tellingly, strangely, and of course these rhetorical questions I've mentioned already. Okay, all right, so now let's go and have a look at some practice for you. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to try and identify the honey LEXIS yourself. Okay, now you'll see I've already done this for you in blue. I've underlined words and phrases that are capitalized, as well as numbers. Okay, so let's assume that you've done that already, and now your job is to try and find the honey LEXIS yourself. Don't do the questions just yet, just try to identify the honey LEXIS. And then once you've done that, we're going to move on to the true, false, or not given questions. Okay, so pause the video now and try to underline or highlight or take note of, at least mentally take note of, any honey LEXIS you see in this text. Okay, let's have a look and see if we can find some honey LEXIS. So you should have found these ones here. So resulted is talking about cause and effect. This is a grammatical way of, again, cause and result. So they did this to do that. They established this thing to regulate that. It's another way to say they established this thing in order to. And if you remember correctly over here, let's have a look at cause and result. In order to was similar to as a consequence of. Okay, well, I've missed out in order to, but that could be written here, and I'll write it there. That would better explain the way that this is used grammatically. They established this in order to regulate and oversee the operation of aircraft in the skies. Cause and result, the word result itself. Contrast, however, emphasis, the first region. Brought about, this is another thing related to cause, to bring about something. Here's an example of clefting. It was only after that. Okay. Fortuitous, that's an example of opinion. So fortuitously, as I said, is often at the beginning of a sentence. So fortuitously, comma, and then they'll give you their opinion. But here it's used as another word for lucky or luckily. Yeah, in this case, lucky. But it might be an answer. There might be an answer hiding there. And this is a more old way of saying because. So for the event of the jet engine suddenly resulted in a large number of very fast planes, because the advent of the jet engine suddenly resulted in a large number of very fast planes. So for is another way to say because, but it's a bit archaic in modern English now. And again, this one, set of rules to keep everyone, in order to keep everyone, it's the same as this one above here. Okay, grammatical use of cause and result. Okay, so now that we've highlighted where the honey LEXIS might be, let's see where how close they are to the answers for number 20 to 24. So the first one, number 20, the FAA was created as a result of the introduction of the jet engine. And notice, by the way, that this honey LEXIS also applies in the question itself. Underlining the honey LEXIS within the question will give you a lot more clear structure about what the question is asking you. Okay, so the answer for that one is the accident. So the FAA was created as a result of the introduction of the jet engine, and it's not that, it's because of an accident that occurred over the skies of the Grand Canyon, and it resulted in the establishment, so created the establishment of the FAA to regulate. Okay, so all of that points to the word. Here's the word result, another word repeated over here will give us that the answer is false because it's talking about an accident. Number 21, the air traffic control started after the Grand Canyon crash in 1956. So air traffic control, ATC, you can see it straight away over here, underlined because it's capitalized. And this is something about it being the opposite because it was established or existed well before the Grand Canyon disaster. Okay, so it's the exact opposite and therefore false. Okay, now let's look at number 22. Beacons and flashing lights are still used by the ATC today. And here we can't find anything relating to flashing lights and, oh no, we do here. While beacons and flashing lights were placed along cross-country routes to establish the earliest airways. But it's not talking about whether they're used today. We've got the word however, which suggests that in 1930s radio communication was coming to use to the ATC, so suggesting that these were no longer being used. But it's not explicitly written, therefore that's a not given answer. Number 23, some improvements were made in radio communications during World War II. So we're looking out for something about World War II, 1940s, which is down here. Okay, and again, remember these are always in order. So let's have a look at that. That's true because we've got the word improved. Improved communication brought about by the Second World War. Okay, during the Second World War, 1940s. So there we go. We've got those two words there that give us the answer. And then the last one, 24. Without air traffic control, modern aircraft would be unable to navigate. And let's see if that's the answer. So without them, this is not given as well. So it's not clear that they are not able or unable to navigate. It doesn't say that anywhere. Yeah, because remember, this is in order and there's nothing mentioned about air traffic control and how it's used, or how it can be avoided. Okay, so although these answers might not be necessarily very close to the lexical honey LEXIS, at least they are close to the words that are underlined here. Okay, keep an eye on, when you're doing any sort of reading, not just IELTS style reading, but non-fiction reading of articles, New Scientist articles, for example, because those, the way that they use honey LEXIS, the design, the reason behind it really is to help the navigation of the reader, to help the reader navigate the text. But it's also something that I've noticed as a teacher of the IELTS, is that examiners use those navigation tools, those honey LEXIS, to help you, to help themselves, create questions from the text. Okay, so if you are aware of them, you'll start to notice them, and you'll start to quickly find where the answers might be hiding. Okay, I hope that's useful for you, and let me know if you have any questions about honey LEXIS in the comment section below. Thanks very much.